Spoiler alert for all of Poppy Playtime, but specifically Chapter 5 because it just came out at the time of this upload. If you ever find yourself thinking about the best cartoons of all time, there's no way you go too long without Gravity Falls coming up at least once, offering a scarier alternative on TV that I enjoyed as a kid and still enjoy in my 20s. Oh, yikes. And in the same vein, Poppy Playtime is up there as one of the biggest indie horror titles of all time, right after He Who Shall Not Be Named. Just kidding, FNAF's the next video. And do I dare say it's a much better horror game than FNAF? I don't know if that's a hot take or not, hopefully not. I do just mean the story though. What the fuck did I even, what? Dude, okay, this game, that section was just really frustrating. The Pines twins survive their summer in Gravity Falls against all odds, but could they solve one more mystery and survive all 5 chapters of Poppy Playtime? So let's set the stage. Getting the setting down in these sorts of cross-verse matchups is always a little tricky, especially when we consider that Dipper and Mabel live in California in 2012, while it's widely considered that Poppy Playtime takes place in the Midwest, likely Ohio or Michigan, in 2005. So for the sake of the video, we're gonna shift over its timeline to match up with the ending of Gravity Falls. So Dipper and Mabel make it home after their summer in Gravity Falls, but during their few months back in school, Dipper would be searching for new mysteries. It's possible he'd find out about Playtime code through Rowan Stoll's tapes, but it seems like those were recovered by Playtime. When winter break rolls around, they catch a flight to Michigan to investigate what really happened to the company. The two in this scenario would replace Poppy Playtime's main character, who for the sake of this hypothetical, died in the hour of joy. First, let's go over Dipper and Mabel and what they bring to the table. Their birthday is on August 31st, making them 13 here. Dipper is a stereotypical nerdy awkward kid. He does go through some character growth and becomes braver and more confident as the series goes on, but even early series Dipper got down to scrap with supernatural beings ready to kill him. He was once extremely reliant on this book, using it consistently in each episode, which he no longer owns, but has also trusted in his own ability to get through scary situations. He's smart and analytical, like how we see him calculate the trajectory of a ball to not hit Wendy in the eye, and of course all of the detective work he does to figure out who the author of the journals is. Mabel is much more free-spirited and airheaded, but while she isn't quite as book-smart as Dipper, she is much more creative and isn't held back by logic like her brother. Like how she solved the Northwest cover-up practically on her own, or when she quickly figured out how to use Gideon's psychic amulet, saving Gideon and Dipper from falling to their deaths. Their personalities complement each other's strengths and weaknesses like a yin and yang deal. I will be equalizing the two verses physically because, as with many cartoons, Dipper and Mabel survive some pretty insane stuff that isn't always consistent, especially when we consider their possible deaths across the other parallel universes in the Book of Bill. And it'd be silly to say Dipper scales to small building level because he survived Bill Cipher's finger laser explosion, which Mabel directly scales to, therefore none of the enemies in Poppy Playtime can even damage them. This is more of a can they figure out how to escape and survive, not can the Pines twins throw down and beat the bricks out of the prototype. But they can and have fought against dozens of types of enemies. Gnomes, giant mechs, zombies, shapeshifters, ghosts, secret societies, the time police, and an interdimensional demon triangle. So basically, none of what they're up against will be too bizarre to them, although we will go over how they'd handle some of the information they'd come across in practice. Even though I won't be going over actual scaling, it's worth mentioning that Dipper and Mabel have survived pretty insane amounts of damage throughout the show, like insane falls, explosions, or getting beat up. But I think it's important to note that while Dipper and Mabel have defeated beings much stronger than anything in Poppy Playtime, it's always with preparation or extra help. And speaking of help, there have been multiple episodes where they would have just straight up died without help, like Wendy with the shapeshifter, Stan with the zombies, Pacifica with the poltergeist, and Seuss with the crazy video game girlfriend. Help that they won't have in this scenario. Not that they always need it, like how the two of them were able to beat Blendon in hundreds of challenges in Globnar. They also won't have access to most of the equipment we see in the show, like the memory gun or time travel tape, but I'm sure Mabel would bring the grappling hook. Aside from that, they only have what they'd find throughout what we see in the games. So the 2 grab packs, gas masks, and all the extra hands they can swap through. But what exactly are they up against? I'll quickly go over who they'll be facing off with here, which is everyone. Chapter 1 through Chapter 5. Most are pretty large, multiple times the size of your average adult, which, much like me, Dipper and Mabel aren't. They're able to break down steel doors and barriers with their attacks. They can also kill humans pretty casually, sometimes with a single strike or bite. Their intelligence, or lack thereof, leaves them acting pretty animalistic for the most part, simply attacking whoever. Toys like Huggy Wuggy, the Nightmare Critters, Pianosaurus, or Yarnaby. These guys also tend to be the simplest physically, just using their size and strength alone to attack people, while quite a few others seem to retain some to all of their intelligence previous to turning into what they are now, like Mommy Longlegs, Legs, Catnap, Doughy the Doughman, the Doctor, and the Prototype. On top of that, they have special abilities that make each of them stand out from the others. Mommy Longlegs can stretch her body out hundreds of feet, Catnap can expel red smoke which is flammable, puts people to sleep, but most importantly causes hallucinations, whether it be vivid nightmares or warping one's perception of reality, like changing a building layout to an impossibly large maze, seeing creatures that aren't real, or warping the appearance of creatures that are. Doughy is 900 pounds of clay that can morph into whatever he wants to be and lift multiple tons. The Doctor can control every part of the facility and see through all its cameras. Lily Lovebraids can manipulate her long hair like an extra set of limbs made of horsehair, finger bones, artificial bones, and other biological material. The Prototype is the biggest and likely the strongest, bar for possibly Doughy. By chapter 5, he does now have Mommy's stretchy arms and Catnap's red smoke, as well as his own physical strength. I should mention, however, that a majority of these guys are still organic and can be hurt or killed by conventional means. So with that out of the way, how would the Pines twins fare? So going into chapter 1 and the abandoned Playtime factory, Dipper would likely already know about the mysterious disappearance of all of its workers, as well as the orphans who lived in the Playcare. He'd also know the more well-documented parts surrounding Playtime Co., like its founder Elliot Ludwig, the recall of every Catnap toy of the Smiling Critters line, and the Playcare, which is essentially Playtime's orphanage. Throughout the games, the player comes across tapes that they can play on TVs that they find. This is how they'd find out about a good portion of what happened. In the facility, they'd grab the grab pack, which I imagine Mabel would take. These are very powerful, possibly being able to rip heads off if the training video is anything to go off of, meaning they could use these offensively even if they aren't used that way in-game. There's a bunch of puzzles throughout the games that the two together would have absolutely no problem solving. Can't say the same for myself though. Surely they wouldn't think too much of the giant Huggy Wuggy statue, but obviously would know something was wrong when they find it missing later on. It would surely freak them out, but after everything they've been through, I don't think they would up and leave at any point, considering that they may feel like they have a duty to solve this for all the missing people. The tapes in chapter 1 set up characters like Stella Graber, the head of the Playcare facility, and Dr. Harley Sawyer, the head of special projects at Playtime Co., and had the idea for the Bigger Bodies initiative, who would later become a main antagonist in chapter 4. Huggy Wuggy stalks the two and eventually chases after them through the maze-like ventilation system, although they obviously wouldn't know the ins and outs like, say, a former worker. Running from and escaping monsters hot on their trail is nothing new to them. Huggy is pretty quick, averaging a 6-minute mile and quickly blitzing and killing workers before they can react, and with the strength to easily overpower and kill a fully grown male deer. The Pines twins would not want to be caught by this guy, but even if like Dipper got grabbed, I think the grab pack could possibly give them at least one free escape. All in all, I think the twins escape Huggy Wuggy the way we see in the game itself. After this, they find a tape that we know is during the Hour of Joy, where a man is about to be killed. An easy conclusion they'd come to is that whatever this prototype the man was talking about caused the disappearance of all the workers. But what did he mean by one breakthrough and I'll be back? But this confirms that there are more monsters, so forward they go. Chapter 2 begins how the first ended. Dipper and Mabel find Poppy, who immediately offers them a way out. This is where the scenario could begin to differ from the game. Since they're here to solve the mystery, I don't think they'd be ready to up and leave just yet, so they'd ask Poppy for answers. As we know, Mommy Longlegs is stalking the player, so I don't think Poppy would be able to expo dump the entire story before getting snatched up. She'd likely confirm that there are more dangerous toys, but that there are friendly ones too, possibly name dropping Doughy and mentioning the safe haven. Mommy Longlegs forces them to play the games in the game station by the rules, and if they don't,
or I'll tear you apart and eat your insides while you're still alive.
they'd beat these games with flying colors considering they're still kids. Dipper plays Musical Memory while Mabel plays Whack-A-Wuggy, and the two playing statues together or red light green light. Mommy Longlegs does rig Musical Memory and statues, but there is a way out in both. And Dipper's smart enough to hit the right button while Mabel's quick thinking enough to grappling hook away from PJ Pugapillar. Before the last game though, the two would run into Kissy Missy, who helps them through. I'm sure her physical similarity to Huggy Wuggy would put them off a bit, but I think Mabel would end up loving her. They would also point out the fact that Mommy Longlegs is cheating, antagonizing her, which would get her to start chasing them right then and there. Exactly how they beat her is speculative, since it just so happened that she whiffed and fell into the shredder in game. They could surely figure out something here, likely killing her in the same way with the shredder or the furnace we see earlier on. We see her bleeding and screaming in pain, so if they couldn't tell before with Huggy Wuggy, now they know that these aren't just toys, but living creatures. And of course, they get their first look at the prototype. They make it onto the train, but since they're willing to help, Poppy doesn't need to force them to stay. And here they would learn what's what's really happening, how Dr. Harley Sawyer proposed the Bigger Bodies initiative, and how Playcare, disguised as an orphanage, was how they got their human subjects to essentially turn into slaves. Poppy would withhold some information like her part in the Hour of Joy, but likely paint them all as monsters to further her plan of destroying everything in the facility. Dipper and Mabel take the tram to the Playcare orphanage and get some exposition on what it is, or at least what it's supposed to appear as, which is a real orphanage that some kids really did get adopted from, and they're introduced to Ollie, a kid down there that's helping them throughout the next 2 chapters. As we know, Ollie is the prototype pretending to help us, pushing us towards traps to get us killed. To escape this place, they need to go to different areas solving puzzles and turning on power here and there and whatever. They first encounter the red smoke in Home Sweet Home, which puts them to sleep and gives them vivid and violent nightmares of their time in Gravity Falls, seeing each other as well as their friends and uncles die in the hands of various monsters they faced, and here they get their first look at the game's main antagonist, Catnap. I think the two, Mabel specifically, would feel torn on how they should handle the toys now knowing that they were kids, feeling much more sympathetic than the player in the game, seeing them as victims of Playtime Co. and the scientists that did this to them. Since they killed Mommy Longlegs and think they killed Huggy Wuggy, they may try a different approach to defeating Catnap. Unfortunately for them, Ollie warned them that Catnap is fully devoted to the prototype and turned this place into its church, making the toys down here part of one big cult. Going into the school, they hear Miss Delight's tape and read her note of how she was sorry that she ate her sisters. Since they starve down here and are still organic, they need to eat. This would further divide the two siblings on how they should handle them, Mabel possibly seeing her as another victim who went crazy but still feels sympathy and guilt for what she's done, while Dipper sees a crazed monster willing to kill kids. This dynamic was shown to us throughout the show, like how Mabel is friendly to Gideon when Dipper tells her to cut him off, or when she decides to trust Stan despite all the lies he'd been telling them throughout the show, even when Dipper pushed her to not listen to him. Regardless, the two would still accidentally kill Miss Delight when the door closes on her. It would be hard not to feel bad for the kids though after seeing their living conditions in Playcare and how they were treated more like animals than human children. Because of this, I do feel like Dipper might be more open to trying to save them than not. In the playhouse, the twins face off against the ruined critters, which, since they have tons of experience fighting smaller creatures with overwhelming numbers, should handle them really easily. Then after finding Dog Day, they try to help him to no avail, considering just how quick the ruined critters possessed him, once again escaping with their lives. They come across the tapes of the Hour of Joy, seeing the warning that was given to the workers as well as the attacks themselves. Once again, this would increase their own contradicting feelings. Yes, they were all once innocent people who were hurt by bad people, but they turned into feral monsters willing to kill any and everyone regardless of whether they were innocent or not. And as we saw with Jacksepticeye's tape in chapter 2, not everyone that worked in the facility even knew what was really going on. All in all though, as we see with Kissy Missy and Doey later on, some of those who were actively involved with the Hour of Joy weren't bad all around. This only leaves Catnap himself after ripping off their gas mask and seeing a much larger and scarier version of him. The fact that there's two of them should allow them to easily beat him in this boss fight, as well as shrug off extra hallucinations they may have with their twin power of friendship thing going on. Finally, they'd beat him with a mega zappy hand, burning him. I'd like to believe that in this moment, Mabel might come through to Catnap for a bit, possibly even calling him by his name Theodore, feeling her overwhelming affection and support, the kind that he probably hasn't felt in his entire life. But even if he were to give in for a moment, we know that the prototype is lingering around at this point of the game, and still ends up killing Catnap, further traumatizing the Pines twins. They go deeper into the facility, but in that moment, Kissy Missy is attacked by the prototype. The two descend deeper into the facility in chapter 4. They get even more insight into the horror that happened here with Riley's notes, a kid who was orphaned at 12, then chosen after some time at Playcare for the Bigger Bodies program. Dr. Sawyer, now part of the facility itself, begins to taunt the twins. They don't have much issue with the critters once again, and get out of situations where they need to escape quickly like the red smoke and freezing room, assuming they don't get the glitch that I got in my playthrough. Yarnaby chases after them in a few sequences, and here's where they first see Doey, a slightly unnerving big guy made of clay. He can morph into anything, change sizes, slide through small areas, you know, the whole Mr. Fantastic or Plastic Man type of powers. Yarnaby was once adored by some of the scientists because of his dog-like attitude, but was molded into more of an attack dog by the doctor, who disapproved of the scientists caring for the experiments. After some time, it only listened to and cared for the doctor. So the question is, can Dipper and Mabel save Yarnaby? We do have confirmation that Yarnaby is capable of showing love, and throughout the game he just attacks the player up until he falls into a vat of molten metal. I think that given the amount of time Yarnaby chases the player, Mabel would have enough time to get through to him while Dipper progresses, especially since the two are kids themselves and wouldn't remind him of the adults that hurt him. There is a section where they'd have to kill a critter or die, but with their new monster dog pal, I don't think they'd be forced to make this decision anymore. anymore. The Doctor obviously wouldn't have any of this and use all of his robots to kill them during the boss fight. Yarnaby being bigger and stronger would take them all on, sacrificing himself for the twins. The Doctor, despite kinda sorta being a victim himself, inflicted the same pain 10,000-fold onto innocent kids as young as 6 years old. So I don't think they'd sympathize with him at all. It's debatable whether or not they'd kill the Doctor, but they have killed sentient beings throughout Gravity Falls, so I don't think they'd have a problem shutting him down. It's not like they're just shooting some guy with a gun or anything. Throughout the chapter, there's some tension between Doey and Poppy on what they should do. Poppy wants to destroy the entire facility, while Doey and the others want to live because they're still people, not monsters. Dipper and Mabel would offer them a place to live in Gravity Falls, where they'd fit right in with all the other strange creatures, getting there with the help of their uncles Stan and Ford. This would minimize the tension between Poppy and Doey, but it's possible that despite their way out, Poppy still wouldn't want them to escape, caring more for the prototype's destruction than the toy's freedom. If somehow the prototype still destroys the safe haven, then Doey might still attack the twins out of anger, blaming them. With the pieces they picked up, they'd learn that Doey is made out of 3 kids. Jack, a kid who fell into a vat of clay, Matthew, a not so smart but very charismatic teen, and Kevin, a physically gifted kid who is also troubled and angry. It's shown to us in game that Doey struggles with his multiple personalities, and I think the twins would push to help him at all costs, especially because of the lengths he'd gone through to save them and many others. They'd fight back the way we see in the initial boss fight, but instead of killing him outright when he comes back, they play his tape so he can remember who he is and what he's fighting for. Prototype attacks once again, revealing that he's Ollie, which I'm sure Dipper would have seen through by now, considering that none of the other toys have even seen the real Ollie. Chapter 5 is more of the same in a lot of ways. Huggy Wuggy, revealed to still be alive, chases the twins, but with Doey back on their side, they'd be able to get away without the initial chase scene. It's possible that Doey would straight up kill Huggy Wuggy here, but he and Kissy Missy are both surprisingly strong. They should scale to each other, and Kissy can harm the prototype with a single attack, who in turn should be stronger than Doey, so I don't think they'd kill each other, instead fighting until they both retreat, meaning the twins wouldn't get robbed of their grab packs in this scenario. But they'd still need a new grab pack with a pressurized and conductive hands. They'd still run into Giblet and eventually Chomp Chompkins, and establish themselves as allies. And the plan to take all the toys to Gravity Falls is passed to them. Dipper and Mabel become the Playtime butchers, much to her dismay. The silly mechanics like Spider-Manning through areas or magnetizing themselves to walls should fit right in with the wackiness we see in Gravity Falls, so they get through all these sections plus the puzzles and whatnot. The wrong side Outimals are more of those tiny enemies that are more annoying than dangerous, plus they're warded off with a flashlight, so they're a non-factor here. The twins would see what each of the toys were subjected to, a creepy hypnotization video by Jill Valentine cosplaying as Miss Rachel. They also see into Huggy Wuggy's memories and the torture he went through so he'd become an obedient toy. The next Huggy Wuggy chase leads us to what was personally the most stressful part of the game. The twins would have to bring 3 batteries to their ports and escape, but since there's 2 of them plus all the projectors that get Huggy's attention, I think the 2 would be able to ping pong him around easily enough and get out quickly. The next main enemy is Lily Lovebraids. She was Grace Green, the hypnosis lady, who was turned into a toy and subjected to the same torture as the rest of them, since the prototype deemed death an easy way out for her. She can stretch her hair out far and wide, and the hair itself is reinforced and many times stronger than normal hair. So getting away from her isn't really an option for them. She forces them to play along with her little house party thing, but as we've seen with the blockades leading up to this moment, her hair is extremely flammable. So after playing along, they help Poppy and Missy escape from her basement, then just burn her alive. Crushing her was cool and all, but they definitely should have lit her on fire in the game. The prototype finally reveals himself here though, and using Catnap's red smoke, separates the group and chases the twins. They end up in the labs and meet up with the others after some more puzzles and lore. The final chase begins after the prototype sneaks Huggy and Kissy right when it seemed like Huggy was having a change of heart. This would only further confirm that the toys can change, and Kissy dying right in front of them after all that she's done to help would shatter them. No room for interpretation, no talk no jutsu, this guy's gotta go. Final chase of the game is on a train where the prototype breaks through to attack them. They use everything at their disposal like the disconnect levers, freezing Poppy's gel, and even blow him up. With Giblet and Poppy's help, I think they get through this section easy enough and jump off the train in time. But the prototype did not die in the train crash, but instead of stabbing one of the Pines twins, Doey saves them both. But Doey's weakness is known by the prototype, so if he wasn't killed like he was originally in chapter 4, I can only assume that the prototype would add some way to freeze him to his body, since we know he modifies himself to become stronger, killing Doey and taking Poppy, but giving the rest enough time to get away and revive the Doctor. If this video does well enough, I'll make a part 2 when Poppy Playtime actually ends, but going off of what we have now, Dipper and Mabel survive Poppy Playtime. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.